Hi everybody, welcome back to video two of part one for chapter 7, management and leadership. And again, with the book, I respect their point of view, but 40 years in the industry, I've seen a different perspective, and I just think, like I say, keep it real. I mean, let's get others' perspectives too. Don't just buy into mine, okay? But fact is, the way they state the way things ought to be, it's quite frankly not exactly as how I found it through my career. And so take that for what you will. I expect to get a call any day now from the McGraw-Hill Tribunal to appear before them, and some Darth Vader-like character will be like, "I find your lack of faith disturbing," like in the original Star Wars. So, what the heck? But you spend 8 hours a day with either your spouse or your partner. You spend 8 hours a day in bed. You spend 8 hours a day at work. So, I mean, choose your spouse or partner carefully, choose your mattress carefully, and choose your boss carefully. It's going to make a big difference in the happiness of your life. Nobody likes somebody coming home and complaining about the boss for 8 hours. That gets old pretty quick. I've seen that from personal experience. So, that's something to take into consideration. If you typically you'll know when you're interviewing if you're going to click with a person or not by the time the interview's over, and if that person is going to be your direct boss. If not, ask if you can meet your direct boss. I made the mistake early on in my career. I interviewed with somebody who was not associated with the person I was ultimately going to be working for, and it was more of a strained relationship, and the boss was 2,000 miles away, and there wasn't the communication that I referred to. I say the higher the level of communication, the happier I always was with the boss. So the more we talked, the more we exchanged ideas, the better conversations we had, the happier the work environment. Just a factor to pay attention to, and the book makes reference to collaboration and all these things. You may be, again, 2,000 miles from the mothership, and good luck, and again, vaya con Dios. So, things we could talk about. Again, anytime you want to discuss some more detail, you want to catch me offline on Zoom, that's fine. So let's go back to the text. Let's walk on the sunny side of the street for the second part of this lecture, okay? Which are the 4 functions of management, which will be quizzed and tested. So, just you might want to give it a glance, just saying. The first is planning. And as I've said before, a goal without a plan is just a wish. I mean, you need to, the more well-defined the path is, the easier it is to follow it. I'm not trying to get zen here or anything like that. I mean, it's sort of a logical circumstance. A good manager will anticipate trends, determine strategies accordingly, determine tactics. We're going to talk about strategic thinking versus tactical thinking. Strategic is long-term, okay? Tactical, if you're talking about the Denver Broncos, strategic is who do we look to draft in the upcoming draft? Who's going to be part of our long-term team plans? Tactical is the coach saying, okay, if we don't win the game this Sunday, I might be out of a job. That's tactical. That's short-term planning, okay? So strategies and tactics both come into play to achieve organizational goals and objectives. So planning is the first of the 4 functions. Second is leading and guiding and motivating employees. I'm a believer that you need to provide an environment that's motivating and hire people that'll flourish into that. I don't think, I don't know any bosses that quote unquote motivated me. I felt I was pretty much a self-starter on things. But there was environments where I was much happier, working my tail off and working late hours and taking that, late night flight up to Tacoma or wherever for, the business meeting at 8 a.m. the next day. I mean, things like that, if you have an environment there that you're happy in, the inclination is to work harder. And so a leader will basically, put you in that environment. And that's, again, something else to look out for. Assign tasks. I mean, certain things need to be done. And that's the thing. Being in class, I mean, things that I sort of harp on in the syllabus, and students need to do this, this, and this. It's really, setting the table for when you get out in the business world. I mean, a boss is going to set expectations for you. Get used to it. The boss is going to say, maybe if you're working now, you probably see it, right? I mean, the boss will say, okay, I need this done, I need this, this, and this. And attach a timetable to it or not, but, at least give you direction as far as things that need to be done. And that's assigning tasks, and that's a metric by which you flourish at your job or not. Explain the routines. What's the fastest way to get from point A to point B? Clarifying policies. Remember we talked about, the term, I apologize, it's escaping me. The industry standard, the compliance, okay? If you're complying with what's accepted in the industry, you've met sort of the standard of proper behavior. So policies within a company tend to be what policies do we follow that are consistent with the industry we're in. And you sort of use your own moral compass. There will be so many gray areas that you'll get in, but that's kind of the fun and part of the learning process. Really is to find out, maybe pushing the boundaries a little bit, but not stepping across the line, okay? Because it reflects on you and it reflects on your company. But if you're doing the right thing, it's you're going to find areas where there's a balance to be struck, and you got to use a gut judgment on things like that. Okay. Item number 3, as far as the 4 functions, organizing. Okay, that's allocating resources, because chances are most of the jobs you're going to be looking at, it's not just going to be you doing everything. Okay, you're going to be collaborating with people on things, so resources have to be brought to bear. When I was selling computer systems, I couldn't be the jack of all trades. The technology was just moving too quickly, so I needed a hardware specialist to work with. I needed a software specialist to work with. I needed an integration specialist to work with to make sure all the pieces fit together. And I could articulate and explain the big picture of what the customer wanted to accomplish. Okay, and basically I could sit down with the team of hardware specialists, software specialists, integration specialists, and say, the customer wants to get to here. They want these reports produced, and they want this data generated, and they need this information to help them make their strategic plans. So how do we get to that point? Through this marriage of these 3 components. And that's that's part of allocating resources and getting the right ones and getting the pieces to fit. Part of organizing for a manager is setting up the organizational chart. Where do we stand in the pecking order? Who is the baker and who is the caraway seed in the great bakery of corporate life? And that's what basically an organizational chart will really, more from a functional standpoint, who reports to who and what functions do they proceed with, okay? So who's got responsibility for what area and what individuals report up to those people? And that's how, and if you need to interact with other areas, where are the bridges? How do we get resources from other groups type of thing? So that's the organizational chart, and we're going to talk about that in more detail. The book goes into some explanations about it. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about matrix structures, tall structures, flat structures. That'll be in Wednesday's lecture, okay? Recruiting and hiring, clearly a very important thing. It's it cuts both ways. I mean, some companies have gotten a very bad reputation of companies to work for because they just don't treat their employees very well. I mentioned, in the software business, the company I worked for that was acquired by SAP, I had 5 managers in 2.5 years, just a revolving door. And likewise with field people like myself. I mean, I was the last one there, and 2.5 years went by, and everybody I started with either, resigned or moved on to another company or got fired. And so that's not a healthy work environment, clearly. You want to hire the right people. You really want to have a team. You want to have some chemistry. It's like when in the class. Now, this is where Zoom, it's a pity that we take classes with Zoom, but next semester will be in person. I mean, the first semester when we didn't have to deal with Zoom, the class, I really felt by the end of the semester was kind of like a team. Everybody, it's like, hey, we're all in this together. Let's make this a good journey, and let's all get through it. And I know we all can, and everybody did. So that was a happy circumstance. And that's when you're hiring people, you want to look for people that can collaborate and be teammates with people effectively. The last of the 4 is controlling. Okay, that's measuring results against objectives. I mentioned the CEO that I had to deal with before, who Wall Street would say, okay, you need to increase sales by 6.5%, and the CEO would nod. And that responsibility just kept falling down the chain of command. Of course, they would always measure results against objectives. And not just for me, but my manager. That's why managers sometimes can be so wound up, because you think about it, it is a hard job, because their livelihood depends on, I had people that reported up to me, but there wasn't a quota that had to be met. This was more sort of what I would call soft goals, customer satisfaction, maintaining, customer engagement, that type of thing. So nobody was getting pounded on to make a number. And but in software, I use that as an example, or computer sales, that type of technology in general. Your boss might get animated simply because whether he can put food on the table or she can put food on the table 6 months from now depends on whether her people or his people are performing up to the number that's been delegated. So, it's hard. So, again, part of controlling is measuring results against objectives. You do want to make sure one of the key things is reward outstanding performance. Nothing more demoralizing than to do a really good job. You know it, they know it, but nobody says a thing. It just goes, life goes on, and you haven't got a pat on the back or, a nice complimentary email or, a beverage at the local watering hole provided for you by people whose paychecks you're helping contribute to. And it does. It kind of sucks the life out of you. It's like, why am I busting my tail so hard when nobody seems to acknowledge it or recognize it? So rewarding outstanding performance is a vital component to being a good manager. And then if goals aren't being met, is taking corrective action. That can be a very difficult thing to do. Really, nobody should be surprised if they get fired. Okay, I mean, a good boss will sort of fire a warning shot across the bow, for lack of a better term. You should be, there should be a conversation that the boss comes to you with, typically saying, look, these are the goals that we agreed to, or these are the goals that are required for this job. And the bar is here, but unfortunately, we're sitting about here. How can I help you get up to here? And because that's what we need to get to. And it should be, I mean, before any terminations take place, there should be collaboration. How can the manager and the team help you get up to where you need to be if things fall behind? Sometimes it's completely out of your control. Sometimes XYZ Corporation, the legendary XYZ Corporation that I keep referring to, made like Under Armour, cooked the books or miscalculated revenue in a nefarious way, and all of a sudden they have to lay off 20% of the workforce, and boom, the next day those people are gone, and through no fault of their own. They did everything they were supposed to do, and but because of poor management or something being missed, or a product failing that everybody expected was going to be a big success, in those cases, yeah, I mean, that's just, it's unfortunate circumstances. COVID, right? I mean, if you were in commercial real estate, certainly a lot of those big commercial real estate companies had layoffs. A lot of other companies had layoffs simply because COVID shrank the business plans. And so in mergers, same thing. You get redundancies. You don't need 2 human resources departments. You don't need 2 payroll departments. Don't need 2 shipping departments. So, that, again, you consolidate, and people unfortunately get laid off. And so some of it through no fault of their own. And that's tragic, and that's, a sad case anytime that happens. But typically, again, my experience in the business world, those people do land on their feet. Okay, they just have to work a little harder to get an equivalent job. So, okay, I think we're done for this first half of Chapter 7. I'm going to try to keep it very upbeat and spry and chipper. I'm going to be perky and happy for the second half on Wednesday. And any questions, of course, let me know. Okay? Thanks. See you on Zoom.